Fred Boyles, I'm so excited to chat with you. You were the catalyst that got me into men's work after the exposure to this book. And I thought we would just take a moment to ramble on our journey and enjoy a little time together and share with other people because we've both been on a journey that parallels, but you were an important aspect that really got me to the first men's weekend that opened up the door for leading a men's inquiry, and
Oh, yeah,
then
I got
that
that
book,
one
of
too.
course, and then from that, the book of questions, and now
That's my
many.
favorite.
Yeah, but I'll hold that up there so they can see it. I'll put the links below for people. And
Great.
then from there, I'm working on a short book called Taboo: The Lost Codes of Men, and it's due out this year. Just because so many people said, you got to get that other book out, you got to get it out. And I want to start with what got you into personal development in the domain of we both had done a lot of personal development ourselves throughout our lives and really got a lot of value out of it. But there's a difference when you work with just men on this topic.
Okay, so how that started was in 1977, I did EST, and I stayed in there for 10 years, did all the courses multiple times. My role model was Spock. Wanted to be an intellectual genius, and I thought my life would all work out. Well, by the 1988, after 10 years of it, EST made me more intellectual and less connected to my visceral man stuff. So I called up the institute, which was Sterling Institute of Relationship, and I talked to a guy named Trout. And he says, "What do you want?" And I said, "I want to be simple. I want to be less intellectual. I want to be able to trust myself and be okay with me." You say, "Yeah, we can do that. That happens here." Now, when I went there, I was full of the S seminar, and I was so arrogant and superior to everybody in the room. And hey, I got all these answers. Oh my God, I'm just bubbling with great wisdom. And oh, yeah. Well, one of the rituals is that you were demoted. They didn't seem to agree with my wonderful wisdom. And anyway, they put me down in the basement. And oh, I was furious. "Don't you know who I am?" And when I came back up and the men welcomed me into the tribe of men, everything disappeared and everything I ever wanted was immediately there. And suddenly was home. There's a saying, I got my boys back. I never had any boys. I got my guys for the first time ever. And later on that day, there was, or maybe that night, there was another ritual where you told your big uglies. And many of them you just didn't know you had. In my case, I had married a woman with 2 boys, and I realized that I had stolen those 2 boys from another man, and I thought the men are gonna kill me for doing that. I'm there with 200 men in a room all doing this all at the same time, but in my mind, I suddenly realized that I'm an asshole, scum of the earth, and I didn't like the man I had become. And I realized that, I had adopted feminine value system for a man, and that doesn't work. That's that was in 1988, and
Wow.
so from 1989 on, I've been doing nothing but the men's work with a long history of lots of trainings. Martin, I always every once in a while, I would just glance through questions in your book,
Mm.
and the problem with those things is that set me off. 2 or 3 questions, and I gotta put the book down because I'm just going bonkers with it. I just have tremendous gratitude for your acknowledgement, but more importantly, for opening up my mind to things that I don't know. And that's really where the magic is. It's really good to be a man. We're always curious what's over the next hill.
Absolutely. Well, mine started, which is interesting, in a parallel in S then became something called the Forum. And for people who don't know, this was just a real intense group personal development. Some people tried to convert it into more than what it was, but it had its utility in that it was supposed to be a inquiry into what it means to be human. It was very profound for me when I started it. It opened up a whole nother world. And then what occurred is from that, at the time, I say my practice marriage, it, the practice marriage had some problems I didn't see even before that. And then it evolved. And my wife at the time said she no longer wanted to be married. And this was a real shatter for me because I kind of had this idea this is it, and we're going to make it work. And to honor her privacy and stuff, I'm not going into the details on it, but the piece of it is that marriage ended about 1995. And then somewhere along that, I had found a friend that was in a group called the Samurai Business Group, or was it Accountability Group? What was the
It was the
phrase of
business.
it? Business group.
That was the heart of
And
it.
it was invaluable because it had a meeting on a regular basis where you had to give your word of what you were going to do. And if you didn't do it, you donate amount of money to a pot that would then go to a charity. And it was a fantastic structure for me. And I was in that for a while, but before that occurred and before the marriage ended, I had come across, I want to say, this book, because
Mhm.
all the personal development seemed to be helping, but there was something missing and I couldn't put my hands on it. The landmark work had been great, really made a difference, but I couldn't figure it out. And Fred, I had really bought into the kind of new age, being a sensitive new age guy and all that. And then I'm looking over at my wife at the time, and she's looking more and more disdained and disgusted. And I remember we went to a therapy session, and I was kind of breaking down, and really emotions were coming out. And the way I describe it is, if you stuffed emotions for a long time, they don't come out gracefully. They kind of, it's like a door that's under pressure. And
Oh,
the
yeah.
therapist said, "Oh, isn't this wonderful?" And I looked over at my wife at the time, and she was disgusted, which I now understand why. But she was disgusted, and I couldn't figure out what was missing. And then I'm quite dyslexic, so I got this book on audio tape. And so imagine I'm working at IBM and I'm driving around listening to this fairy tale that's really was written by Robert Bly, which I got to meet while he was alive, about men's issues, because he had been doing all this metaphoric stuff with women, said no one's done anything about men. And Fred, tears were running down my face, and I was kind of nervous because I had no idea why. There was like something it touched, and I didn't understand it. And I knew that was a hole, but I didn't know where to go. I didn't know there were men's groups. I didn't know anything else. I had become what Justin Sterling says, a snag, a
Mm.
sensitive new age guy. I remember him looking me in the eye and saying, I said, Justin Sterling, this is the one that did the men's group. He says, "What do you tell women?" He says, "I tell them to stay away from the snags." He looked right at me like he knew that's the life I had lived. And I go, "What does that mean?" He said, "Emotions without spine. They're dangerous to women." And I was like, "What?" Oh my gosh, this is counter to everything I had read
Oh,
in my
god.
little self-help books. And then you and I got on the phone, and I mentioned the book, and then you said something. I just want to capture this because it was so incredible. You said to me, "I'd like you in 3 or 4 months to come to LA and do this men's personal development training." You knew I was into improvement.
Oh, yeah.
And he said, I'm going to give my word that we'll check in once a week. And I want you to give your word. You'll find a way to do it without putting it on a credit card, like earn your way, not just, throw money into it or something like that. And I remember thinking, Fred, I went, this is okay because no men really keep their word. I was in the corporate world where everyone I had met in that at the time, and please forgive me for people that are in integrity in the corporate world, but at the time, everyone seemed to always have a back door. Anything they promised, there always seemed to be a back door. I thought this is not a problem because he won't keep his word. And it was almost an unconscious. This is safe. He's promising something. I cannot worry about it. And then it started getting closer and Fred, I started getting nervous. And I'll tell you the tipping point, and we've talked about it before, but I want people to hear this is one time you missed our meeting. It was like Sunday evening. And I called up and in my kind of a sensitive way, I said, Fred, want to make sure everything's okay because you missed the meeting. And all right, and I was pissed, but I wouldn't admit I was pissed then, And you said, I'm here with my men's group. I broke my word. What would it take to make it up? And Fred, I jokingly said 50 push-ups. I just came up. And then you said, guys, hold the phone, because this is back for those who are younger. We still had phones that had cords attached back then. They weren't cell phones. And then I heard the counting, and I go, holy crap, he's going to keep his word. I'm in trouble. And
Mm,
there was a fear of this event that I couldn't put my hands around it, but I knew it was important. And the way I explain it is, it was, to me, the Sterling Weekend was designed to be a rites of passage for men in our culture.
mm.
And what I say is, no man went into a real rites of passage excited like a party. There was an element of exhilaration and fear, and there should be, because it's a initiatory experience in the history of man that's going to tear him from that I'm just the mama's boy into the next level. And it's not designed to be comfortable. It's not designed to be it's designed to be disruptive, and that's part of the beauty of it and the health of it. But I didn't know all this at the time. And then it got closer and I went, I'm doing it. And Fred, I was scared. And I couldn't figure out what. I'm just going to a personal development. There are going to be about 80 guys there. Why am I've done all this, like, personal development stuff. But there was a real visceral fear. And I remember, I think I told you it and you just said good. Good, because you
Oh, it's
knew that was it. Go ahead.
there's an old saying, doubt kills the warrior.
Uh-huh.
Well, I was filled with intellectual curiosity and doubt, and that's how I ended up actually being rejected out of the men that really owned their manhood and
Mhm.
sits away because I had doubt,
Mhm.
because I always had doubt. I was living in the question, which is a landmark saying.
Mhm.
And so I immediately thought, "Oh, I'm living in the question." And the men rejected me. And I went, "What? What happened? I've been conned." By the time I was dealing with you, I had no doubt. I knew
Mhm.
this worked.
Mhm.
I knew EST works, landmark worked, but the truth for me is that landmark made me more feminine,
Mhm.
and Sterling made me more masculine. When I left there, my higher purpose was, I must stand every man to be the most outrageous hero he chooses to be.
Mhm.
Now, I didn't know hero was immature,
Mhm.
because I have a long list of childhood wounds, and my way of dealing with them was to be a hero.
Mhm.
And in today's world, hero is a young man wanting to do something for 10 minutes and have a lifetime of adulation and financial payoff. It's not really available. And one of the things they taught me at that men's weekend was instead of being a wild stallion, try on noble mule. You go to
Mhm.
work every day. You keep your word impeccably. And at the end of this interview, this conversation, I'm going to share something that rocked my world, scared the living crap out of me as a result of Samurai, but it was I always wanted a spiritual answer to a intellectual problem. I wanted magic and miracles, but I never Samurai had this context. Keep your word or die. But nobody died.
Mhm.
You couldn't
Right,
hold anybody accountable.
right. Uh,
So it was bullshit. Now that went on for 20 years. It was bullshit. I'll just be honest. What came out of Samurai was doing stuff together, like what we're doing right now. I'm counting on you to literally make me look better, to literally bring out in me what I forgot or I even maybe never knew. And friendship is the thing that I'm doing these days. But back to you.
so we get to the weekend, I get there at the airport, you pick me up, and, someone you were dating was there, and driving it, and all I remember is, getting into the room. It was American Legion building, and there were all these men, and I'm not gonna go into details like you because the value of anything like this is there's an element of surprise. If you knew everything that's gonna occur, then it's just a waste of time. That time of being around men being real, and there were veterans with severe wounds that I'd never imagined having, and I kinda thought, "Well, always knew my dad. Why is this an issue?" Which I can unpack later, but there's still, it was an experience where I remember flying on the plane there thinking to myself, I'm let's say, a 34-year-old, I don't remember the exact date, I'll have to look up, year-old boy in a male body, a man's body, and and I'm nervous. And I remember when the weekend ended, I checked in on that feeling and I went, "Actually, I'm a 34-year-old man that has a lot of work to do." It was really interesting. It wasn't like the weekend just did it was like it opened a door that gave me permission to start. And I remember my martial arts instructor that said, when you earn the next belt, all you earn is the right to practice at the next level. It doesn't mean you've accomplished something. And that's to me the shift that occurred, and it was very profound because I didn't even know what was missing. And I do have to tell you a story, and I don't know if you know this, but I got at the airport to go home. And of course, I didn't have a lot of sleep, you know, and I I was always hypersensitive to everything. I was like the first to put down men and hear the wounds of women. And there's nothing wrong with having empathy, but it's sort of placating or inauthentic when you do it at that level. It really is. It's a compensation for something missing over here. And I walked up to the counter for my ticket, and the woman looked at me and she said, "What would you like? Seating?" And I said something I couldn't believe this snag would say. I said, "Well, I'd like to sit in the middle seat with 2 beautiful women that buy me drinks all the way home." And it came out of my mouth, Fred, and I was horrified because, "Oh my god, could I be such a chauvinistic pig? Oh my god, could I voice an honest thing that I'd actually like?" You know? And she just looked at me, and you know what I'm talking about, Fred. She looked at me and she said, "I'll see what I can do." Because there was something where in my view, Fred, what was missing is for my moving into my masculine center was moving into my body. In fact,
Yes.
my wife that knew me right after that. I mean, she knew me, I think, before their wife or real close to it as friends. She said she heard my voice drop an octave over that time period, and I didn't even know it. Like, which kind of makes if I'm more in my head going into my body. And even Robert Bly said depression is when we don't go intentionally into our grief
Mm.
occurs. We're dragged down because we aren't willing to do the dark work.
Well, right there,
Yeah.
um, that's I still struggle with a lot of other men that do not wanna feel the pain,
Yes.
and I had a men's team. My old team just, self-destructed by selling out to, n no integrity around being honorable men. Alcohol, pot, promiscuous sex, and married. And I would scream and yell at them, "This is not honorable." And then I would scream so long and so hard that I purged all my resentment toward what they were doing, and it would allow me to embrace their immaturity, their forever young, the Peter Pan syndrome. So, I don't know, a few months ago, they had their very last team meeting over here in my backyard. This one particular guy on my team, his mother was a stone heroin addict all his life,
Mhm. Oh.
and he had no real trust that he was loved by her.
Mhm.
She would get high, park him here, pick him up, get high, park him there. So he grew up absolutely hating her. And so just before she showed up at his door, and he's like almost 40 now, okay? But he still holds her in this state of contempt.
Mhm.
So she shows up and still a heroin addict, s walks in and, it's his mother. He hates her, but it's his mother. So he lets her come into the house, and he gives her a room, and she's staying there for a couple weeks. Well, 2 weeks later, she overdoses
Mm.
on heroin in that bedroom in his house.
Mm.
He's relatively stoic about the whole thing. Just, "Meh, yeah, business as usual. Mother died, heroin, nah, no problem. I've seen her go this route before, and I guess this time she's not coming back." So he was very stoic about it. So he's sitting over there, and I said, "Do you know that your mother's highest level of love for you was showing up there to die in your house?" And and I said, "So do you get that she loved you?" And the ritual goes like this. So, did she love you? The answer is yeah, but you don't like the way she loved you. That's the thing that you reject. But he started screaming, "Fuck you" at me. Fuck you, you want me to feel bad." And I go, "Yeah, I do." On the other side of that is your tears and your sadness. And I think you and I have had these moments of absolute sobbing despair
Mhm.
and not really sure where it's coming from,
Mhm.
especially when you're having it. And so when he started screaming at me, we went back and forth in the fuck yous. I got a really good fuck you. I had lots of practice. And but the thing was is that at the end, he he didn't want to feel the pain that his mother didn't love him the way that he needed her to love him.
Mhm.
And that is a wound that is so profound. But from my experience, when I have been in a grieving circle of men and I just started crying and screaming and yelling and just don't know where it's going to end up. At the end, the men, the men's attention, compassion, and sheer physical circling around me healed me.
Mhm.
And I had one of my wives divorce me. By the way, all of them said the same thing. I had 3 wives, and all of them said the same thing, right around 10 years, "I find you so annoying. I'm not happy, and I wanna go." So my trophy wife was had just I had gone to a men's retreat, and she moved emptied the house and left. And I come back on a Saturday and said, "Remember that problem I had yesterday?" Well, she moved out, and I started to cry.
Mhm.
And suddenly, in this room, 100 men on one side, 100 women on the other side. The chairs were the folding chairs, and they
Mhm.
exploded away, and the men shot in around me,
Mhm.
and there was a man on every side of me, touching me,
Mhm.
and within seconds I've been among men a lot by this time. Within seconds, I went from a 2 to a 12 on a
Mhm.
1 to 10 scale. That's the power of men's ability to heal when you're willing to cry and feel the pain. And I always say this, I had to learn to trust the untrustworthy.
Mhm.
Men are
Yeah.
dicks.
Right.
They will say mean things that hurt your
Right.
feeling.
Right.
Yeah. And when you're used to it and you go, "Oh, hey, I get your fuck you."
Right.
I
Right.
love saying that.
Yeah.
It's a privilege and an honor. Down the road on his timeline, that's the beginning of going to that pain that ultimately allowed me to feel love. And
Yeah.
it still happens all the time.
It's one of the things that often occur when women would find out I had a men's group. Says, "Well, aren't you gonna get a woman in there to defend herself?" And I got words for it. I said, "You know, when men get the courage enough to be real with other men, we're actually not just talking about you." You know, there yeah, because it really takes a lot of courage to get there to start with and to get real just among other men. And that's why I learned over the 12 years of leading the men's inquiry and other things. But I'm going to back up a minute to the continued journey of the airplane. Remember,
Okay.
I told her what I wanted. So
Yeah.
I get on the plane and I my seat's in the middle, and I go, "What a stupid thing, Fred. I like looking out the window." And she just put me in a middle seat, and there'll probably be, 2 people I don't get along on either side, and you know what I mean? It's like, "Why did
Oh,
I do this?" So that's
absolutely.
the relapse of the, "I shouldn't have done that because, oh my god, stand up for something I want." And then all of a sudden, there 2 women show up, and I say, "Well, they're quite attractive," and they're looking at their ticket next to me. And they go, "For some reason, we're friends, but we're on either side of you." And I said, "I can move." She said, "We're okay." And so they sit down next to me. Well, one
Oh,
of them, I start talking to them and I said, "Yeah, I just did a men's weekend." Of course, they wanted to hear all about it because what the heck is this with just men? And I said, "Tell me who you are." And one was interesting. One was an athlete and a woman hockey player. Really, a very
woo.
fit, beautiful fit, kind of a European, but she played ice hockey of all things, I think it was. And the other one said, "Well, I'm the a replacement singer for an old band you may not know." And I say, "Well, try me," you know? And they said, "Fleetwood Mac, Stevie
Oh,
Nicks has had a drug problem, and I'm the replacement singer." Okay? For Steve, in fact, there's an album called Time, and I have a little autograph. I said, "I like an autograph," and she said she wrote "To a Real Man," and she signed it. It's somewhere
oh,
downstairs, okay? So then, of course, the woman comes up, and I'm thinking, "Well, I'll be nice and I'll buy drinks." And before I could open my mouth, the girl says, "No, we're buying you drinks on that trip." And I guarantee you they hadn't talked to
oh.
the person at the checkout. We had the best conversation, and they wanted to know, and I kind of shared, I felt like this coming in, I feel like this going out, but it's a humble feeling like, oh my gosh, I really am adult male, and I've got a lot of work to do. It just opened the door. I've been playing as a a little boy, kind of hiding out in this adult body and hoping I wouldn't get caught. And now I know what it is and I can't hide anymore. And that's to me was the opening that got me here. And then I talked to you and found a group. I have a picture of our first group. I'll have to make sure I get it somewhere. I might overlay it or something. And those were called the Sterling Men's Teams.
Yep.
And we had a group, and I had a roommate that I think I found through the group. I don't remember, a really nice guy. And so we'd get together, and it was really good. And then I remember talking to someone, I don't know if it was you or someone else, where I said, I really want a group of men that can get together and explore deep questions, but not intellectually, but from our own experience. So we can only speak in I statements. And I thought kind of this inquiry into life, but just with men. And you can't say, well, most guys and stuff like that. You had to speak from your own experience. And a man said, sometimes the lantern you want lit is yours to light.
Mm.
And
That's
I
right.
went, what's that?
When you say something that I don't know what you're gonna say,
Yeah.
and my authentic response is, "Yep, yep, yep, yep."
Right.
You always know when you're having a good conversation when your head bobs up and down. "Yep."
Right.
Well, that happened a lot at the men's weekend.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you for allowing me to bob my head. Yep, been there, done that.
Sounds good. The next thing I did, I don't know how it happened, but I started this idea and I came up with the idea of the men's inquiry. And that's why, see, why this book, what
Yeah.
happened is this was built entirely organic. I cannot really take credit for it because what I did is I thought I'm going to have it once a month. I'm going to invite men to it. It's going to be open to come to. And then our job at the end of each meeting is what's the next question to explore? And at the day that it occurred, almost every time I went, why am I doing this? This is too much work. Why should I make the effort? No one cares. And then the doorbell would ring and someone would show up. And then someone would come back. And then another man would come back and we sit in a circle in my house, and I'd say, here's the inquiry, here's the rules are you can only speak from your own experience. And then we had I somewhere I have the process, but the idea was to do something at the beginning to kind of get comfortable in the room. So it's like a conversation. What do you want to leave out, or something we would do to get ourselves present in the room. And I said, the only time we're going to correct you is if you say we or you have to use I statements. And the goal was to stop it. And so you had to say, I'll give an example. Like one of the questions was, what type of son were you to your father? And that came bubbled up, and I had never thought of that before. I was the only child, so I'd always, yeah, I never thought what type of son. Well, actually, from my perspective at the time, kind of a selfish son, pretty self-centered. And and then we'd go around and speak it, and you had to speak from your own experience. And then the ending, you had to come up with insights and actions. And I'll share one story we did, and I don't remember the topic, but it was interesting because one man said, and this is the man I have permission to share this because all of it was confidential, so I'm very protective of it. And he said, every time I get up in the morning, I always have a fight with my kids because they're just that way. And in the meeting, the insight he got is, what if I played a role in this? What if there was a part of me that played a role in it? And the next morning, he decided to not yell at them and start getting things together for school. And they weren't a problem. They changed in his view. It was
They
really, I mean, I remember calling him. He said, you wouldn't believe what happened. I just
yeah.
took on, my kids are great. They're on time. They do what I tell them to. Now, I don't know, don't think, folks, this will just magically happen. I think it was the giving up, the kind of forgiving, some very profound aspect on his side that shifted, and families are all connected, that occurred, but it was really profound to him. And out of that, it changed. And so this went on for about 12 years. And then, Fred, what happened is I started a Yahoo group on it because a guy from Canada heard, oh no, Alaska heard about it. He said, I'd like to be part of this. So I said, I started this kind of version of virtual. Not as easy to do, but it went for a while. And then somebody said, well, I want a group like this. I want a group like this. And I thought, how can I capture the experience of this inquiry? I'm going to write a book on it. Well, here's the problem, Fred. All the years of experience of doing this was confidential. So I couldn't really use anything said there. So then I started reaching out and saying, I'm going to ask a question and get men to answer it. And they get to stay anonymous. And that's what the book was.
Oh,
So the first inquiry was this one was questions and then the answers from men. So this is not a easy, relaxing reading. It's kind of dense, but it gives a windows into the unspoken word of men and an experience of it. And so I had like 120 men contributing to answers, and I kept them all anonymous, changed things if I thought you could identify them. And that's what that book was. Well, I'm pretty dyslexic. So I'm like, how am I going to get this written? And this guy from the group, who was an Anglican priest, we met, he's in Raleigh, and he said, I'll help you edit it. And I thought, I don't have the money. I mean, it's thousands of dollars to edit, especially something like that. Well, this book is half of the original document. I'm not sure I even know where the other. So he worked on it, and it still has a few typos, but thanks to him, very little. But he volunteered and edited the whole thing. And that made it possible. So what we did is we took basically twice the amount of material and asked what were the most important topics to explore out of that full collection. And that's what that first book is. And I led that inquiry till my parents started getting sick, and I just had to be up in DC to take care of them more, and it wasn't possible to do it.
that I've been doing self-examination for 57 years. Group therapy on me for 57 years. And um there is no graduation, you know, because your context of viewing the same information, you're a different man.
Mhm,
So you're looking at about money, about sex,
mhm,
but you're a different man. So the beauty of it is that I surrendered to that change is the one constant in the universe. My context will grow. I will be a bigger human being. Therefore, whatever subject matter I approach, I will I will be bigger and the effect on me will be more I was going to say it'll be more holistic. In other words, if I get better on a 1 to 5, the next time I broach this subject, I'll be a 10 starting as a 5.
mhm,
And I I I felt a little conned by Landmark doing that.
mhm,
Oh, yeah, we'll get that to that one in the next seminar. Sign
mhm,
up. And and I didn't like it. So out of that, I created my own training called Boiled by Boyles.
mhm,
It was $150. It was hour and a half. And here's the promise. You will go through this barrier that you have, or you will choose not to go through that barrier that you have. If you choose the latter, you will be the barrier. You will not have the insight. You will not have the epiphany, and you will not heal the wound that you came in here to heal.
mhm.
But you'll know that you're the accomplice. You are the accomplice. The accomplice? You're the guy fucking yourself. It's you.
Right.
Well, that worked really well. I had a lot of men come in there and they had that epiphany and experience and freedom and oh boy. Well, then I got truly sick individuals come. These are men
Mhm.
that were their neurosis, either
Right.
physically or by choice. I stopped it overnight. I'll tell you what happened. So part of the process is that when you emote this rage over the betrayal, let's say of a woman, you have a girlfriend that dumps you. And let's say you've never had a girlfriend. It's your first and only one. And it's the greatest sex ever. She's all over you. It's everywhere, anywhere. And oh my God, this is my life turned out. And this is a nerd guy that was a college professor, never did anything when it came to women.
Mm,
Well, he wants to get this horrible feeling of betrayal out of him.
mhm,
So he does. And it's a very visceral, violent expression of his anger
mm,
toward what she did to him.
mhm,
And so he says, "Can I tell her?" I said, "Absolutely not.
mhm,
This is a man thing. You have rage, betrayal at a depth that you're given your limited experience. This is all consuming. You cannot communicate it to her in any way. Please repeat back to me what I just said.
mhm,
I can't communicate with her in any way." Okay. Gets home, writes her a letter, puts all what he wants to do with this new powerful thing, new powerful, he wants to kill her. Puts it in
mm,
the letter.
mm,
Within the next day, he's fired as his job, has to
mhm,
leave the country to get work at all.
mhm,
And for me, that was it. I'm
mhm.
not a
Yeah.
professional. I had no
Right.
insurance.
Right.
And I realized that the more successful I got, the more men I would have like that. And
Right.
most therapies, they end up with a core people that become their friend and pay them to be a friend, and
Mhm,
they never get better, as
mhm.
in moving on from it.
Yeah.
This is just part of their life. Well, I did not have the ability, it was only one session. There was no
Right.
follow-up.
Right.
Anyway, the bottom line of it, that was my, uh, experience of a one session healing that
Sure.
was built around money. I was so
Right.
proud, you know?
Right.
So, anyway.
No, I understand. I some of the things I wanted to share that we kind of talked about and that the experience is things that I learned, and this is in my next book, is that when a male, I'm going to say, Fred, a male whose core is masculine, a testosterone based male, because not everyone's biologically the exact same. There are, cases where in utero things change and everything else, but where the core is masculine, if that male embraces the feminine side before he makes peace and owns the masculine side, what I find it does is it creates a soft passive aggressive male, a dangerous
Mhm.
male out of it. And that's what I've learned through the experience is that you have to first kind of embrace the value of the masculine. And the best way to put this to people who don't understand it is imagine if we had a culture where we told women, well, you're not allowed to appreciate being a woman. You must appreciate being a man first. How insulting that would be. But we do that to boys every day. In fact, I just talked to a mother. She says, I'm really worried because it's almost like he's going to be drugged or it's negative because he's just a boy. But if he were something outside that, they would embrace him like it's wonderful. And but his core is a boy. He wants to play army and he wants to do things. And I told her, I said, when I grew up, instead of Ritalin, we had recess. They would, us boys had to go outside, the school's still there, and just about kill ourselves for a little while. And then we'd
Oh,
sit
yeah,
down and listen.
Foursquare?
Yeah. You
You
know?
know? Oh, yeah, it was war.
Right. And we were like, I mean, no one really died. Maybe once this whole semester someone broke their arm off the jungle gym, but then it was a battle scar and we talk about it in class. And We have, in my view, taken away so many of the ways young men win. That's why they're drawn to video games, because instead of embracing, oh, there's something different in the core, we need to honor that first. And the it's not that you have to reject that feminine side, but you better make sure the core is solid before you take it on. Or in this is in my book, it seems to damage the psyche in a way that leads to what I call passive aggressive men. They look gooey and they're soft and enjoyable, but then they snap. Or the woman never feels safe because she presses and it's just goo there. Or they become overly brittle men that just have to attack all the time because they have no mode except attack, because the inside isn't developed, the inside isn't healed. I'll tell women, not many women ask, am I woman enough? But a lot of men ask, am I man enough? There are
Oh, yeah.
different conversations in our psyche, and I don't know if it's DNA or cultural or whatever else. There are different conversations we have. And when we can't have room for one, we won't have room for the other. It's one of the things I've learned in all this men's work I've done is that there's a deep fear from women that if men do this work, that it'll mean more violence towards women. And the actuality is there will be more violence towards women if men don't do this work, because that's the guarantee, and that's what we're seeing in society. In fact, Fred, I'm boldly saying what's coming out in my next book, I believe, is the root cause of violence towards women, because what occurs is when that psyche is not healed, now you're a wound and you either lash in or lash out. If you lash out, and then often it could be with women, and that's, to me, the thing that needs to be understood. Many have asked me, when will, once they understand it, they go, when will this change? I said it's going to be only with a combination of mothers and men, not just men. The reason is, if a man in a corporation brings up, well, wait, is this fair to men? He'll be unemployed within a month. He'll be torn to shreds. I
Oh,
know,
God.
because I've got stories of that occurring. What on earth, you chauvinist pig? And what has to occur is to be aware of how little tolerance we have for males' pain. It doesn't mean they need to get it. I actually say, Fred, it's the work that men have to do with other men, not burden women with one more thing. It's our work to do, not theirs. It's ours. And to have understand, to see men. And that's, Fred, something that I didn't realize I didn't do before the men's work that has happened after it. Now, I did the Sterling men's, and then later I did the Warrior work as well, because I wanted experiences of both, and they both had something of value. And I met many men who just had life occur in a way to address these things. So good for them. But this is really important to understand, that there's an innate fear that if this stuff exists, it'll take something away from women. And what I want invite them to look at is, we're already taking something away from women. It's not another burden to put on them. It's men seeing other men. And Fred, I see men, and it's amazing how young men who respond to this and they don't know why. It's like, I see you, you know? And the story that encapsulates this is, after the Sterling Men's Weekend, I really went through of what are the components that are missing for me. And I realized one was trusting a man at a level of mentoring and mastery. I think of Yoda and Luke Skywalker. I took on wanting to learn massage therapy from a man I admired, because I thought you can't get in a closer context than mentoring in massage therapy. And he did structural integration. His name's Scotty. I said, I want to learn. In fact, I went on and got my license and became a massage therapist on the side too for a while. I decided I had to let that go. But it was important because I said, Scotty, I want to work with you. I want to learn the art of your skills, highly gifted. Is there something we could trade out? He says, I want to learn about computers and technology. So we traded out this. Each time we'd sit down, I'd teach him how to use the computer and we'd work together. And I remember a very pivotal time because have you ever done Ralphing or structure, that type of stuff? It's really intense stuff. I mean, it's not
Ralphing
like
hurts like a
leaning
mother.
in, right? It's a very personal, intense stuff and pretty kind of masculine in quality. Not that women aren't great at doing it, but that's it. And he was working on my chest area because it was really locked in. It was like I remember saying, I've got a lot of emotions coming up, because and he said he says, what's going on? And then I said, I'm terrified if you see the man I am, you'll reject me.
Mm.
And then tears just started running down my face.
Oh,
And
yeah,
he had his hand because he's a very powerful guy right there and just said, "Be with this."
yeah.
And this was a pivotal change for me. And the other thing is we blurred all this stuff with confusion and sexuality and everything else and this was just it didn't have to be massage. This could have occurred with us laying bricks together. This could have occurred with us building a house where I was dependent on him for my survival or something. This didn't have to be in the even the setting there. But this was pivotal to realize, oh my gosh, we also need as men a mentoring connection where
Oh,
we're working on learning some mastery, trusting in a context, a mentor from another man. And then there's another core element. I treat it like a core element that transfers in that moment that's needed in the process of maturing, because that was a pivotal point for me. And I realized, oh, I'm afraid of being seen. I'm afraid of being judged. But more important than women, men that I admire. That's one of the aspects I would have never gotten to if I weren't on this journey. If I were going for, I just want comfortable, if I just wanted something that was easy, I would have never gotten there.
recently, an Indian saying, I think it was in a movie, but it still is good. I was talking to my best friend the other day and I said, something came up for me and it flows from exactly what you said. Martin, I see you.
Mhm,
Martin, I see you. It has the potential to open up when you're seen and somebody intentionally looks at you and sees you and drops the facade of safeness,
mhm,
you know, I'm judging you.
mhm,
I see you. There's no judgment. There's just seeing you.
mhm,
And to be accepted like that is a very special gift. And it's special to a kind of community. And I'm at the end of my life. I started dying at 75. I'm almost 78 tomorrow, next week. My father died at 78. Not that I think I'll live into my middle 80s, 90s maybe with especially with the new AI stuff, but that's not the point. My body started, asthma, bronchitis, thin skin, diverticulitis, hemorrhoids, multiple skin cancers. Basically, the what used to heal easily before
mhm,
doesn't anymore.
mhm,
And me and my doctor, and we work on it together, managing my symptoms. And but what it did is it brought up a couple things. Mostly, the question is, did I really do okay? Did I deliver? Did I make a difference?
mhm,
And the answer flowed from my guts. Yeah. Okay. Well, why don't I just have the best time? This is supposed to quote the golden years.
mhm,
That mostly implies going on trips and, you know, but what I've done is let the world in. I let you in.
mhm,
I see you seeing me,
mhm,
and I have to let things go. And on my men's team, there's thing, I bring in whatever you resist will persist landmark. And so anytime I'm triggered about something like Donald Trump right now, I that made me go crazy. So instead of blaming him, I go, what about me is that I'm going crazy here. Every time this I watch him do something and I call it a lie and multiple lies, I go crazy. What? That's my problem. What's going on here? Well, I was on a couple of men that are really, crazy for Trump. This came up. He was, he doesn't pay taxes. Well, after we talked and fought back and forth, I go, wait a minute. He said, Fred, we always love you for saying that you're a liar, hypocrite, and a con man. Now, I've said it for years
Right,
because I want to have access to the dark side,
right,
much like Trump has done.
right,
So I left that fight going, I'm a tax evader. I pay as little taxes as possible.
right.
And that took me off my pedestal, my righteous indignation for his lies. And I went, oh, wait a minute. Under the right circumstances, I'll lie too. Ooh. And for the first time in my life, I had to own being a liar, hypocrite, and a con man. I said it, but not really. Well,
Sure.
now it's in my face and it's real. And I no longer get triggered by that anymore. And I can even see by him inspecting all of our government agencies. I don't like the hostile takeover, but I just the very fact that he's inspecting will cause a men respect whatever you inspect.
Right,
On our men's team, we inspect attendance, we inspect participation, we inspect list clearing. Uh, we have only one standard on my team. Keep your word or renegotiate it before you break it. One
yep,
standard, keep your
yep,
word.
yeah, you're either your word or you're nothing.
Exactly.
Yep.
So now, in that one facet, in closing, I wanted to end something here. This is when we were doing samurai.
Mhm,
Samurai, you wrote down your promises
mhm,
and you paid $5 for every broken one into the kitty. But every like Tuesday or Wednesday when you met, you would read your list and you'd go public with it. I always had 2 or 3 things I didn't accomplish.
mhm,
So I started going, well, I'm going to go 100%. I'm going to try that out. So Martin, I started going 100%.
mhm,
And then I started getting access to miracles and magic.
mhm,
I just put out to the universe, I want this, I want that. I want a $22,000 sale. Phone rings and, ooh, $22,000 sale. I want this relationship. I want traffic. I mean, all these little miracles after about 30 days of keeping my word impeccably.
mhm,
Well, here's something you don't know. For me personally, when I started having miracles in my life and getting effortlessly getting what I wanted,
mhm,
I got scared.
mhm,
In a week, I had everything I wanted for that next month,
mhm,
everything. And I got scared. And I'm going, ugh. You know, being a god in my own world, in my own universe, it's boring. There's no drama. You get everything you want effortlessly and easy. I chose to go back to being a hypocrite, liar, and a con man. That way I have a game to play. And that level of just going back in the human condition, it was, I couldn't handle being a god. I couldn't handle being, I couldn't handle life being effortless and easy. Now, at this stage of my life, I'm leaning toward that.
Right.
And I'm more selfish in the sense that I want you to be my friend.
Mhm,
Now, to do that, I have to be your friend.
right,
Well, I'm not really big on that. I just want you to be my friend.
right.
You do what I want, when I want, where I want, how I want. I mean, I actually got to do something. So, what I figured out that You can count on me to be your friend.
Mhm,
And that means I'll pick up the phone when you call. I see your name. I'll let you know I can't talk now, or I will talk to you.
mhm,
Um, a couple of guys on my team, given the depth of my coaching, you said the word a mentor.
mhm,
Guys, all of my problems in my entire life were generated be me not having a mentor when I needed one.
mhm,
This Rambo bullshit, this lone wolf bullshit,
mhm,
I was designed to be in a pack always.
mhm,
To do it alone is stupid, stupid, stupid. And we're encouraged to be a Rambo and a lone wolf with our movies and our culture. A six gun will solve all your problems.
mhm.
Well, simple solutions to complex problems usually come from you delegating a lot of your problems to other men to help you with.
Mhm.
Having mentors is everything. And that's how I viewed your book on your questions.
Yeah, well, and you were a catalyst and mentor to me, and I'm very grateful for that. You stepped in and challenged me that started all this. So, it's kind of funny. You're benefiting from the book, but you're the one that started it in the first place and went, "Oh, I knew there was the poll back before the marriage ended, but I had no idea what to do with it." I mean, Iron John's just a book. It's like I know something's here, but I don't know where to go. I didn't even know there was an option, and that started this. I want to end with something for any young men watching this because, Fred, there's such epidemic of isolated and depressed young men today that really isn't being seen enough. And there's a link I'll put to being on the panel about suicide. And I brought up that like 70% of men commit suicide. And then the counter argument is, well, women try, but they don't succeed. And I'm going, wait a second, why do you have to say that unless your psyche has to discount the man side? Why couldn't both
Exactly.
exist? That shows this was the therapist that said that. And I said, maybe that shows your unconscious bias towards men. And
That's that toxic masculinity.
right,
You
right,
deserve
of
to
course.
die.
And oh my God, talk about something that's damaging young men. It's like
Yeah.
I don't want to be that. Well, being an unman doesn't work out too well. I tried that before. This just I want them to hear this is it, and the answer is start with maybe attempting to develop a friend and do something, a male friend, and do something with it.
No, that right there. From as being a little boy, I always wanted a best friend,
Yeah.
and I never got any. I never got one. Now I've been with men for 50 years, literally thousands.
Mhm.
But I have a saying: how many of them would I go to lunch with?
Mhm.
Overwhelmingly, very few. You.
Right. Yeah, right, same here.
And so, getting a good friend, a
Yeah.
best friend, is very rare, very difficult. It is much easier to have women quote as your friend, but it's the lazy man's way. If you want to have a deep relationship with yourself, get some male friends. And
Yeah.
what that includes is rejecting a bunch of them. Oh, you're not
Yes.
good enough.
Right.
And that mentor, I'm a mentor. I mentor a lot of men. I'm going to tell you a secret. Typically, after they come and they want some advice and help, blah, 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 blah. And I said, I'll know I did a good job when you start mentoring me.
Mhm.
It always comes back.
Mhm.
The paycheck of a young man allowing me to share my wisdom,
Mhm.
allowing me to be patient with him,
Mhm.
letting him know that you're trending in a healthy direction. You're doing good.
Mhm.
Check back with me in a week or two
Mhm.
and we'll talk again or find some way to communicate. All of my problems my entire life stem directly from me not having a male mentor.
Mm.
Oh, here's one.
Right.
I now have a female mentor.
Right.
And I'm going to tell you, you got to be strong enough to be with them.
Right.
They have so many wonderful ways.
You're right, strong enough with them. Yes. Yeah. The thing I'd recommend to start is, begin, this reminds me of one of my men's inquiries that I remember sitting in the circle of men, and we're talking, and I felt a connection that had I had only felt kind of with women emotionally, but there was no sexuality with it. It was a connection of not being alone. It was a connection of being like there. And it was strange because I didn't know that was possible. And that's the key and that can occur. And it's a nonverbal. It do something with them. Find a guy to fish with or something like that. And a
No, no,
lot of the
you
country people,
there's the
yeah.
path. Men usually connect through activities.
Yes. And it's okay to do that.
Yeah, and then, Justin Sterling said, "We can well, all this work that we're doing here to
Yeah.
bond and modern day initiation into manhood,
Yeah.
you could do the same thing changing p spark plugs on your
Yep.
car."
Yep, absolutely.
And I really and it's got virtually nothing to do as an inquiry. It's just something visceral when you're with men.
Yeah.
And so notice that you and I are talking, and whatever you say,
Uh-huh.
I do a dance between competition
Uh-huh.
and wanting to expand on your insight.
Right.
And at my age, I really want to expand on your insight. I want you to come away knowing how really brilliant you are. Those questions,
Yeah. Yeah. It's
you
great.
got your book.
Yeah, the book. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
I'll
but the
put the
question
link in
book,
it. Yeah.
just pick one question out of there. Just
Okay.
pick
All right.
one.
Let's say one. Okay. All right. Here, rites of passage. What are the relevant rites of passage for males in our culture today? What are different rites of passage in life? Which one serves us and how? I'm going to go to another one. Embracing our shadow. What is your shadow side? That was one
Mhm.
from the inquiry. Do you find that what disrupts you about others lives inside you too?
Yes.
What's that about? These
That
and
my
these were
team,
ones that evolved. Yeah,
that's what we did Tuesday.
really.
That one right there.
How do we let ourselves to be emasculated? Chapter 13.
Oh,
What
yeah.
does it mean to be emasculated? How do you let it happen? But what I want to say is this is beautiful because it's organic that evolved from the conversation of the collective of men that showed up. I didn't sit down and just go, oh, this is the next question. I would like get something and we test it in the inquiry of being together. And then we have one faith, religion, and God, because it wasn't one. We had Jewish men, we had agnostic, we had atheists, we had Christians that assured. How do spiritual or religious rituals support your life? I'm so glad you brought it up. And then I forgot in the back it has a little area about the book about the men's inquiry too. And I'm going to end on one story of this, and it was a man in Florida contacted me and he wanted to start an inquiry group. And now it's, get it, do whatever you want. It's open source. All I ask is if you use the name, give me credit for it. That's the only request. And he says, look, all the women get together, we're all retired, and the men, we really don't get together much. We're kind of all isolated. And I said, well, why don't you get together a coffee shop and why don't you start with something safe, like some type of philosophical question or a question from the book, and just explore it. Let it be safe. Don't go too heavy first. Get together, have a cup of coffee. And so they started to meet, and the women were convinced that these guys were out drinking, chasing women, going to a strip club. They couldn't believe that they were doing what they said. Okay. And then it was so funny because the women snuck around, followed the men, and realized they were actually at the coffee shop meeting and chatting. And
Oh,
and and he said his wife said, "I so apologize because I didn't know this was even possible." It was such a great story that it was discovered. And he said it meant the world to us because we just knew Tuesday we got together. And I remember being on the road and being in a little McDonald's in a small town, and there were a bunch of older guys sitting there having coffee and a biscuit, and
ah,
they were solving the world's problems. That was them connecting.
notice how Martin just just glowed.
Right.
He was so filled with that story's beauty and the love that you knew was gonna happen between that circle of men. And they didn't
Yes.
have to do anything but just hang out and drink coffee.
Yeah.
They were gonna love each other.
Yeah.
They were
Yeah.
gonna come away better
Yeah.
for that
Yeah.
time together.
Yeah.
And you were emanating the vibration of it just
Yeah.
by telling the story. And
Yeah.
I want you to know it engendered love and respect for you by you telling me that story. On my men's team, when I call you, we have phone etiquette. It goes like this. Just good time, good or bad time. Okay. And then I say, well, how long? Because a lot of men like talking to me. It goes too long and then they get mad at me. But there's 8 areas that we delve in. And the first 5 are career, wife, children, health, and fun. Then the others are community service and the men's work, what we're doing right now. But anytime you stop your interaction with me and you go take care of your wife, you go take care of work, the faster you can do that, the more abrupt and rude you be, the more
Uh-huh.
love I get
Uh-huh.
because you and I are taking care of your wife together. And
Right.
it's,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I
No,
want
that's it.
that.
Yeah. And what I want to end on is the gold of facing these things and moving beyond and making the connections and taking the risk is freedom, is power, is a connection that I build a connection with people in a way I didn't, and it is a it means I bring something to my wife. My beautiful bride, who's my commitment is she's always my beautiful bride. There's not a question, and I remember one time when we were kind of starting out and got married or something, and she says, "Well, you know, if things ever don't work out, it's okay." I said, "No, it's not okay. I expect you to be fully committed to me and vice versa. This is life. We're going to work it out." And it was amazing taking that stand. I have to ask her about it, but I know it's a shift. It's like no back doors. When my practice marriage ends, I went to my friend I've known since kindergarten, and he had been married very young, and the parents had introduced him. He claims it was an arranged marriage. I'm suspicious. He was pretty wild, and I said, "What do you do when you don't get along?" And he said, "We don't get along." And I realized there was no back door. There was this like, we're going to work it out. And that's where I want to close on something out of Tom Golden's work of the way men grieve and how men need to be careful to make sure that they have therapists that are compassionate and understanding of the unique way men operate. Because
Mm,
I've had 5 men go through becoming social workers and say if they brought up what they learned in men's group, they may not pass. It's that serious. I'll put the link to his book. But I
wow.
was at my friend's house that I've known since kindergarten. He's Jordanian. His wife is Syrian. He was adopted Egyptian. His parents were Egyptian. They passed, and his wife said, "You know, he hasn't grieved his father." Because she knows I was the more emotional growing up over him. And I said, "What has he been doing since his dad died?" Well, instead of grieving, he's been in the backyard rebuilding it and re landscaping it and everything else. And I said, "Where did he play with his father?" And I just paused. And you could see the emotions welled up. I said, "That's his grieving. That's his honoring the space. That's him doing. That's his grieving." And
Wow,
he
that's
doesn't have to know it, but he did it. And it was amazing when she realized she was a very good nurse and knew stuff. And I guarantee she was never taught that men had to grieve in a certain way.
that's
And that was it.
beautiful.
Yeah. And
Well,
so,
I've never heard that before.
yeah, well, that's right. I learned from Tom Golden's work, The Way Men Heal. That's another book I recommend. I'll put several down there.
Oh,
But
yeah.
yeah, we as men need to do the work with other men. We need to do the work. It's not another burden for women to do. We need to do it. And it's not about shaming them to do it. It's about if you're isolated, it's time to start getting some help, starting to work with things, starting
So,
to take some
Martin,
risks. Yeah.
sex makes you think that it's all gonna work out forever and because
Yeah.
that honeymoon period, okay? But it's a fallacy given today's world. 9 out of 10 marriages suck. 5 end in divorce. If on your second marriage, on average, it's 77 out of 10. When you're having a divorce, it's not happy time.
Mm-mm.
So if you want to really have a shot at that 1 out of 10, get yourself a mentor. Do not get seduced by how great sex feels. It's bullshit. It'll go away in 6 months.
Right.
And then you got a human being to deal with.
That's right. And usually you'll throw yourself out the window and then they'll leave you because you're no longer there because you
Oh,
didn't do that
what
work.
was that? My favorite one. They kick you in the balls and then complain about your posture.
Right. I understand that. Yeah. Yeah. So, well, this was delightful, Fred, and going on this journey together will continue. I appreciate your all you've done for me, and I love it because we have quite different backgrounds. I was more in the technical. You sold you were sales. You sold signs, right?
Yeah.
As you
Well,
know.
I ultimately was a success as a sign designer and salesman
Uh huh.
by having find a niche where my customers are mostly women
Uh huh.
and I mostly photograph them and make them look young and beautiful.
Uh huh.
And then down the road, when they're ready to retire, they hire me to do multiple schools for big dollar amounts.
Good.
And it all works out through love.
But
Me,
you
other
billboards and everything. I mean, signs, right?
everything.
All types of
Right
stuff.
now, I mostly do, um, remodel cafeterias. That's a sign, a
Mhm.
monitor, and photograph the food and create the content.
Cool.
Everything I put in there is a direct quote from the customer.
Mhm.
I say effortless and easy. I say these words. I'm really good at following directions,
Mhm.
which really means I am going to make sure that your vision, your higher purpose, your focus statement is in that monitor. It's
Mhm.
reflected in your food. And I tell you, watching women love children,
Mhm.
it's only recently that I've been home and be able to watch my wife love our grandkids.
Mhm.
And Martin, I never was home for that ever.
Mhm.
I was always at work, gone.
Mhm.
So the point I'm making is that women mothering and nurturing, I go to work so I can make extra money to give her to her to take care of the kids
Mhm.
because that's my job. What did Sterling say? Learn to say yes, dear, and mean it.
Mhm.
Well, you got to have some balls to do that.
Mhm. And
I-
learn to say no when
yeah,
you don't mean it. Both. It's
yeah,
just like the aspect of fathers that claim they'll say, my wife ruined my sons. No, they didn't. You didn't stand up for your sons at the right time. You
you
were
got
afraid
it.
that you'd offend her instead
Yep.
of standing up for them.
Well, even the word no,
Yeah.
you got to understand how it hits them.
Right.
Well, sweetheart, you want me to do something right now? I really can't, but I'm more than willing to give you solid 20 minutes. How about at this time?
Yeah, exactly. Right.
I got to learn how to say no without being a dick
Yeah,
by
absolutely.
their standards, not mine.
Right. Right. I
Hey, fuck
understand
you
that.
is a salutation in my
Yeah,
world.
right.
It
Right.
means I love you.
Yeah. Yeah, excellent. This was delightful, Fred. This is what I
Thank
wanted to do for a while, and,
uh,
let's continue, and I'll be giving you updates on the book. The
oh,
goal is to get out this year, so
well, if you got any copies left, I'll buy the ones for
oh,
the
yeah, for
question.
this, we'll get sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, we gotta work on I'll look this up,
I wore it
we'll get
out.
them for you.
It's all
Yeah, no,
thumbed
we'll
out,
get it.
man.
Absolutely, we'll get it. I'll put the link in there. This is
Thank
great.
you.
All right, take care, Fred.
Love you,
Talk to
man.
you soon. Take care.
Take
Love
care.
you too. Take care.